What's good, everybody? Welcome back to the Cloud Slayer channel. Hope you guys are doing well. Today we got another Monday Ramble. Hope everybody had a great weekend, and hopefully their week continues to be good. And today I'm going to talk a little bit about admitting to yourself some of the faults that you have. Right? Constantly, always talk about addictions and how. You could try to fight those things, how you can dig yourself out of those things, and getting yourself onto a track that is better for you, right? Addiction, it's a big problem in almost anywhere you can go in the world, right? Especially if you live in the States. And I see it everywhere I go. Canada, the United States, and it's just everywhere, man. There's opium, there's heroin, there's meth, there's all cocaine, all these other things, right? A bunch of drugs. Alcohol is a big one, stuff like that. They're all bad for you. They're all terrible for you, especially if you're chemically dependent on these things, right? And it can be very hard to kick. I know a lot of people that can't ditch the booze. They talk about doing it. I was there myself. Heck, it's not easy whatsoever. People say whatever they want about certain things because they're not chemically dependent on those things. But it's easy to say when you're not the person that's suffering from these things, right? It's easy to say when when it's easy for you to quit those things, and it's easy to say that it's easy for other people when you haven't been in their shoes, right? Fact of the matter is, it's not easy for anybody, right, to do any of those things, to stay away from drugs, to quit drugs, to doing all that stuff, right? It's not easy for anybody in life to do what they're doing. That's the fact of the matter. It may seem easy because you're not that person. It may seem easy because they make it look easy, right? It always looks easier when somebody else does it. I got a bunch of examples for that. I'll start off with one that isn't related to drugs. Anywhere I work at, you got to train somebody that's new, and they're like, holy cow, you made that look so easy. You made that look fast. And you're like, it was pretty difficult. I'm not even the fastest guy here that does that stuff, and you just got to let them know, one day you're going to make it look easy. The only thing that is required of you is to do it, right? Be consistent with it, and practice. You practice and you do it over and over again. But you just gotta figure that out, right? You gotta figure out how to be consistent. You gotta figure out how to stay away from those things, right? And for quitting like drugs and stuff like that, the first thing is admitting that you have a problem, right? You admit that this thing is taking over your life, right? For me, when I was younger, it was alcohol, right? And I didn't want to admit it at first, and it wasn't until people reminded me of that, hey, you're getting fucking blacked out almost every night, every time you drink, you're doing something that harms you and can affect other people around you. And a lot of people, they get told that, but it doesn't stick. It's in one ear out the other, and they just can't. They need the booze for whatever reason, for coping with things, for forgetting things, for for some kind of pain that may be mental, that may be physical, and instead of seeking help for those ailments, they rely on booze. And there's this song that alcohol isn't a medicine. You don't get your medicine from a liquor store, right? You don't get the cure from the liquor store. And I can't remember who it was. I believe it was Dax, but it resonates a lot in my mind when I think about those things, right? So many people go down that road of self-loathing, thinking that they're medicating themselves, that they're doing something, but if you got to take something to make something better in your mind and things like that, self-medications, self-diagnosis and stuff like that, then it might not be the right thing for you, especially if things continue to go down the dump for you, down into the trash, into the dumpster. At some point, you got to realize that your life is it's going downwards, right? It keeps going down, it stays down. You're at the lowest point of your life, but you can't quit those things. Why is that? Why is it? What's really going on? If you can't figure it out, that's the easiest reply for anybody out there to you and others that are affected like you is going to be, go get some help, right? Go get some help. But are you going to get some help if you don't want to admit that you have a problem, right? Most likely not. I know I wouldn't. I know a lot of other people wouldn't. Even when they're faced with the truth, will they? Will you? I can sit here all day until I'm blue in the face with tears in my eyes and things like that, and tell you how much it takes for you to admit it to yourself, to admit it to others. But the fact of the matter is, it wouldn't matter. It wouldn't do much, right? Because at the end of the day, it's still going to take you, it's going to take you realizing these things and admit it to yourself. Because you could know the truth and still not admit it. You could still not admit it. And, things will continue to be tough for you because you don't want to admit it. You don't want to face the reality of your actions, right? And the truth hurts. The truth hurts more than anything else. We don't want to admit our faults. It sucks, and it's not anything that anybody likes to do at all, but that's the only thing that we can do to help ourselves become better, is to admit these things, right? Admit our faults, admit our failures and things like that. I all too often I'll see it time and time again too, where people are stuck in the past. They live in high school, they live in whatever moment was the best for them, but they're still hurting and they don't know how to get past those things, and then they're just stuck in a time frame while doing drugs and feeling bad and be like, I coulda, shoulda, woulda. Yeah, anybody coulda, shoulda, woulda, right? But the fact of the matter is, it didn't happen, right? It didn't happen. And when it came time to move forward, did you or didn't you? That's the biggest question in everybody's life, right? Anybody's lives that they're facing hardships. Everybody faces hardships, first of all. But, how do you overcome those hardships? How do you get better? How do you, do these different things? And it's all too often people, they blame others. They're lucky. They were born into it. They were whatever, but they didn't see the hard work that they put into it. It's always easy to say something's easy without saying what went into it, right? Were they facing traumas? Were they facing whatever? Were they facing internal conflicts? We don't know, because we can't walk a mile in somebody else's shoes. We don't know what they're thinking. We don't know how they feel or anything like that. And I guess we just insinuate that it's easy for them, that they just go around butterflies and rainbows with the greenest grass in the world, and it doesn't affect them the same way. But the fact of the matter is, it probably does. And, every day it's a mental battle within themselves to not do those things as well, They might be facing the same things that you do, but maybe they learned or taught themselves or learned from those mistakes sooner than you did, right? And they learn how to move on. They learn how to cope in a way that's healthier for them, and stuff like that, right? When I was younger, growing up, it's a traditional way, a traditional religion of the Monday way, and you know, they talk about traditions and how healthy it is for our people to practice those traditional ways, right? And yeah, it's very important, but you still face the same battles. It doesn't matter, a lot of kids my age or even a little bit older, a lot of them die, drugs and gang violence and things like that. And some of them are still battling drugs and gang violence, right? It's not funny, but it's true. And a lot of beautiful people, a lot of young people, lost themselves within that because they don't know how to cope with those things because they maybe had a rougher childhood that nobody's seen, right? Maybe, it's never easy. It's just, that's point blank. My cousins that I grew up with, drugs, in and out of jail, going to prisons and stuff like that. But when we were younger, I didn't see any of that. I didn't know any of that because I knew about drug problems. A lot of my family has it, and I've had my own battles with alcoholism and drugs and stuff like that. But I still got to continue it. Still got to admit it. Still got to do my best to be better and cope with my problems in my own way, in a different way, whether that be lifting weights or beating up a bag or, something else, playing basketball. I love basketball. I don't play it like I used to, but it's because I'm getting old and these knees are weak. But, hell, it's just that because you don't see those problems doesn't mean that they don't exist. But, but regardless, they're still suffering and they're still doing their best. They might not be perfect, and they're never going to be perfect, and neither are you. But as long as you keep trying, and you figure out different ways, to help yourself stay out of those things, it's going to help as long as you find something that helps you be consistent and things like that, right? But like I was saying, they had those problems, and even though they're practicing those traditional ways, they still can't stay away from that stuff. They still, when they're not there at those places that are considered sacred, that are considered holy to our way of life, right? They still go to those drugs. They still can't seem to cope with those things all the time. Not every time, anyways. And it's never easy. It's sad. It's a sad thing to see somebody that you've seen healthy and strong-willed and outspoken fall to these things, right? I talk about my Uncle Mark all the time, man. He had big battles within himself. Talked about the pills, talked about the alcohol, and he was pretty open about it, And like I always say, I use him as an example because he said a lot of things to me that affected me a lot within myself when I was a kid, I had battles that I didn't know that were within me that I had to face that he spoke on before they happened, right? Because he was experienced in his life at the time, and a lot of times when I was facing certain battles with myself, I would hear his voice. I'd hear many voices of people that tried to guide me right in my life, and it took a long time for me to confront those things too. And it's going to take you a long time as well if you're currently in those situations, if you're currently whatever, addiction comes in many forms, but only you can battle those things. Only you can pull yourself out of there. You're going to be waiting for a very long time, if not forever, if you're waiting for somebody to pull you out of there, because the truth is that it doesn't matter who tries to help you. If you don't want to help yourself, if you don't want to admit these things, if you don't want to do something about them and change your way of life and keep yourself away from those things, the change will never happen. It doesn't matter who helps you, who tries to pull you out, because it's not you. It's not it's not what you want. So people can't do it for you. Others can't do it for you. Only you can do those things. So there's going to be people that might give you way more support than you realize. And sometimes you're not going to realize it till they're gone. Till they're gone from this world, that what they were trying to do for you, what they were trying to help you with, and things like that. We all take it for granted. We all take those people in our lives for granted, and we don't realize it until we're staring at their grave saying goodbye, and sometimes you might not even show up to that because you might be ashamed. One of my cousins that was like a brother, he'd always come out, stay in the night, and we talk about the Grand Chief, and that's his grandson, right? He's my brother. And he's still having those problems. When his father passed, he didn't show up to the funeral, and he was in town. I can only imagine what was going on within himself, what he was thinking. And I could be wrong, I guess, too, because I don't know. I'm not him. I can only imagine. If that was my dad, I don't care if I was on drugs or anything. I'd show up, and that's what I'd like to tell myself. But fact of the matter is, I'm not him, and that wasn't my situation, right? And, who knows? I know when we were younger, he'd always say stuff about his dad, but he'd be the first one to defend his dad, right? That's how we all are. We talk shit about our family, but we're the first ones to jump up for our family, right? And, yeah, heck yeah. But anyways, you got to admit to those. You got to admit to these things if you want to move forward. Progress is slow and steady, sometimes slower than you want, but as long as you're making that constant progress, that's all that matters. That's all that should matter. And that's all that is ever going to matter. And if you want to grow a little bit older, then the drugs allow you to, you got to figure your way out through that. For whoever it is, your kids, your significant other, your family, anybody, your friends, whatever. Whoever gives you a reason to want to carry forward, to walk forward, and be a better person for yourself, for everybody else, whatever. And, that's the power's within you. You just got to see it. You just got to realize it. And you just got to do the best you can, because that's all you can do. So I hope you guys have a great one. Until next time, this has been another Ramble, Monday Ramble with Cloud Slayer here. And if you like this content, please consider hitting that like and subscribe button. I do appreciate it. Until next time, guys, I'll see you guys later. Peace.